One of my favorite parts of video games is the social aspect. Having fun with a group of people and playing games together is one of the best parts of video games because you basically get a flat multiplier on the fun you're having. Bad games can turn good, and good games can turn great when playing co-op. What's weird is that co-op games are not just as common as I think they should be. Especially since online play makes co-op more accessible than ever. You don't have to invite someone over anymore. It's honestly incredibly strange because we have the technology and we have seen games like Baldur's Gate 3 that can be incredibly popular. So why aren't there more co-op games? Well, first let's start off with the argument of why a game should be an exclusive single-player experience. The reason that a developer may choose to create a non-co-op system is for a couple of reasons. If it's a smaller developer, they might just not have the resources to properly build a co-op system into their game. The creators of Don't Starve didn't add a co-op mode until way later into its lifespan. Building anything in a game takes work, and creating co-op mechanics means that a developer will be forced to sit down and make sure that not only their game works in single player, but also a co-op setting. This essentially means doubling the workload for any potential bugs or quality assurance. But what if a studio has the means and adequate resources? Why not make a co-op game in that scenario? Well, the reason could be an aesthetic choice. The type of story that developers want to make may lend itself more to a single-player experience. Maybe they want the player to feel isolated or alone. Or maybe it's a horror game and the goal is to make the player feel scared. Intensity and adrenaline can be shared, but fear is a harder experience to nurture when you have a friend or many friends cracking jokes. Lethal Company plays with the concept of a co-op game in a horror setting by making the co-op in that game incredibly weak. For starters, all of you are the same space person that has no special abilities or toolsets. Secondly, the microphone system is based on proximity, meaning that you'll only be able to hear your friends if they're close. If they die, they can't talk. This creates a situation of absolute isolation when you aren't sure if your friends are alive or dead, which in turn creates fear. You can't tell if you're alone and you won't be able to hear them until the mission ends or you die alone. This keeps the horror nature alive and well. So let's say neither vision nor resources get in the way of making a high quality co-op game. What is the reason then? Well, I actually don't know. Why is Spider-Man 2, the game with 2 Spider-Man in it, on the box no less, is not co-op? A game funded by Sony and made by Insomniac. Like, I'm actually confused that this slam dunk of an idea wasn't executed. 2 Spider-Mans. It's not like you're the only Spider-Man running around, or it's just Peter Parker versus the Sinister Six like in the first game. It feels incredibly odd that they would make this choice, especially considering the idea of web-slinging around New York City with a friend is just a cool idea. Another thing that can be annoying is limited co-op. If you're going to have a game that has cooperative play in it, why have some weird limitations? The greatest one that I can think of is Monster Hunter World. In Monster Hunter World, you need to see the cutscene of the monster first before hosting or joining. Cutscenes are certainly important, but this makes going through the early game slower if you're trying to play it with a friend. Thankfully, Monster Hunter games are based around fighting the monster multiple times, so you can grind for loot. But during your first time, it just encourages one or more players to be ahead of the one trying to host. That way, only one person needs to watch the cutscene, and then everybody can join to hit the monster with a steel chair. It's also why Rise was an overall smoother experience in the beginning of the game, because you could just watch the cutscenes with a friend and there was no issue. There's also those weird co-op games where progression only counts towards one person, which is like weird. I don't know why you would do that. Then there's Dragon's Dogma with the pawn system. The pawn system is a large mechanic of the game. It can be labeled under the vision argument of why there's no co-op. But it stings a little more because there aren't a lot of games that offer a combat system like Dragon's Dogma and put you in a party with other folks. Nevertheless, the pawn system is an example of an aesthetic choice because the whole game is built on the idea of pawns, and pawns provide unique mechanical experiences. But I still would have liked if it was co-op, because I like co-op and stuff. Another game that is aesthetic choice on its co-op system is the Souls series, or more specifically if you want to keep it topical, Elden Ring. Whether or not the mechanical way of summoning players in the Soulsborne series is an aesthetic choice is something that is certainly up to FromSoft. But I will say that the seamless co-op mod made Elden Ring one of the best games I've ever played. There's just a few games where you and a friend can just go around a weird, funky world, level up, and just kill bosses and raid castles. It's weird that there's not a lot of games like this. Now, I wanted to make a distinction between co-op and multiplayer. Cooperative play and multiplayer are similar things in concept, but the implication of multiplayer, at least to me, is a wider scope. To me, co-op means 2 to 4 players that invite each other normally or can start their game together. It's sort of like just a single player experience, but you have a couple buddies with you. Multiplayer is more loose and open, and can be seeing random people in the hub world or competitive battle royale matches. The connections that you form in a multiplayer game are different from the ones in a co-op game. This could perhaps be the reason why there seems to be less co-op games. Multiplayer and live service games are seen as more profitable, while single player games remain as safe bets. Meanwhile, co-op games are sort of like a middle child. They exist, but some people would rather make a single player game or just a multiplayer game. It's perhaps not the most satisfying answer, but that's just what happens. Also not saying that co-op just doesn't exist anymore. Alright, it's like, I just want more of it. I think that game studios now are just more likely to choose between either let's make this single player game that is all this narrative and stuff, or let's make this multiplayer game that it's 5v5, 6v6, battle royales type stuff. I will say it is slightly better than random single player games having like multiplayer deathmatch modes in it for no reason. Like Last of Us, even though I heard it's good, it's still weird. Anyway, do you think, am I crazy? That's the question. Am I crazy? Do you guys think that there should be more co-op games? Or there's enough of them? I don't know. I hope you enjoyed the video, and yeah. I hope I'm not crazy in thinking there's too few co-op games now.